Good evening and welcome to another edition of Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette, coming to you live via SHR Media, streaming live on Facebook from lovely, beautiful Cape May County, New Jersey. And we're having just the most beautiful 60-degree weather. It was like 30 degrees yesterday, and now it's 60 degrees today. I don't know why Mother Nature seems to be so fickle these days, but I have on this like heavy, thick sweater, and it's super hot today because it was 20 degrees yesterday. I don't understand what the problem is, but something is going on. But anyway, thankful to be here. Thankful to have you guys with me today. My guest today is the one and only Mike Fitzpatrick, cybersecurity expert and founder of and CEO of NCX Group. He's going to talk to us today. I knew I messed that up. He's going to talk to us today about why America's first data privacy law is such a big deal. And if you don't know what I'm talking about the new law that was passed in California. It's supposed to protect all of our privacy. But it's really going to be far-reaching, and he's going to give us some details about that. So I'm looking forward to talking to him about that. Sorry, I made a mistake and I was trying to fix it, but I'm not going to be able to fix it anyway until I get off the air. I am not going to accidentally mess up a live feed as I've done before. I was trying to fix it. But anyway, I'm happy to have you guys. I'm happy to have Mike on. Mike has not been on the show in a good while. I didn't realize I don't throw anything away digitally. And I don't think he's been on since June. That's a long time for him to not been on, especially since we have a deal that he's supposed to be on every month. But I've definitely been failing in that. We need to have him on more often. At least it looked like he hasn't been on since June. Hey, happy to see you, Amos and Levon. How are you guys? I hope you guys are doing well. Thank you so much for looking at the show today. For some reason, I am nervous, and I'm never nervous. I do this show every week. You can see Mike Fitzpatrick is in the Facey chat. But I feel like I'm a little nervous today for some reason. But anyway, I'm excited that I'm going to have Mike on the show. Usually I talk about Money Talk News, so let's talk a little bit about that. I've had such an interesting day. I'm just a frustrated teacher today. But let's talk about Facebook and the fact that they're sticking to their ad policy. They said they would not stop the tactic of micro-targeting for political ads. It's something that people like myself who were critical of this policy say it's used to spread misinformation, but I think that's a bunch of buffoonery. I think it's used to spread information that they don't particularly like, and so they try to get rid of it. It's really irritating. During election season, usually run a couple of social media pages for candidates, depending on who they are. During campaign season, and I'll tell you, it is really annoying having to put up with their policy. Their policies are absolutely brutal, but they're planning on sticking with it. They're sticking to their guns on that. In other news, Taco Bell is testing out a new strategy to lure talent in the U.S. labor market. They are offering 6-figure salaries to select Midwest and Northeast locations. Side note, Melanie is Googling positions at Taco Bell as we speak. Because that is crazy. And I have fast food experience. I used to work at McDonald's in my other life when I was a teenager. I think I for 6 figures, I might be willing to go back. As a matter of fact, I ran into one of my students at McDonald's today. I'm ashamed to admit, but that's where I was in the McDonald's drive-thru today. I had a tight schedule today, so McDonald's it was for lunch and dinner. But I ran into one of my former students, and she was like, "Oh, hey, it's good to see you." Whatever. She's like, "Hey, this is a great job." She's like, "It's actually the best job I ever had." And I said, "No shame in that." I started off at McDonald's, and not only that, but McDonald's promotes really quickly. I mean, people, she poo fast food restaurant jobs, but some of them are really good jobs. I'm just putting it out there. I have considered going back a couple of times. I'm not even joking about that. Because teaching has proven to be frustrating for me at times. So on occasion, I look and see if McDonald's is still hiring, and maybe that's something that I might want to consider. But she said it's the best job that she's ever had, which I thought was impressive. I thought maybe she felt weird because I saw her working at McDonald's, but I didn't feel weird at all. I think working at McDonald's and any fast food restaurant builds character, and it's a good idea for any young person if that's where you want to start. But you really could become an owner or a manager there pretty quickly if you work hard enough. That's real talk. Now, my mom, I worked at the McDonald's not far from my house, and I didn't know this little story until my mom shared it with us. Me and my sister both worked at McDonald's, and which is about 5 minutes from our house. And my mother told me that she said to the manager to work us very hard because she wanted to make sure that we both got our college education. And so she told the managers to work us hard, which they did. Consequently, my sister and I both have our college educations. She said, I don't want them to want to work there for the rest of their lives. She wanted us to do whatever we wanted. And she said, without that piece of paper, we would be limited. Times have changed since then. But I appreciate my mom doing that for me now because I worked super hard at good old Mickey D's. We're up against the break already. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette. Before I leave to go to commercial break, I want to welcome BZ to the Facey Chat. Nice to see you. A brand new Ron Edwards notebook coming your way right now.
Off another massive spending bill full of wasteful uses for our tax dollars and a few insults thrown in for good measure. Hello, I'm Ron Edwards. $1.5 trillion? Are you kidding me? The Democrats howl to the moon, complaining about money needed to secure our USA southern border with a good border wall and other security measures. But yet, they were solidly on board for a $4 billion payment to secure Jordan's border. Congressional gumps threw in $22 million to help the Serbian Regional Center for Agricultural Development improve the quality of Serbian cheese to match international cheese standards. Back to the border issue. I just can't get over the fact that congressional Democrats and rhinos didn't deem our southern border protection to be worth as much as they allotted for Jordan, to which they approved $4 billion. Yet only $1.5 billion for our southern border. That, my fellow Americans, is an insult. We all know that Democrats and a few rhinos hope to spin our republic into oblivion by imploding our economy under a mountain of debt. That is yet another insult. But the biggest insult of all is President Trump signing this wasteful madness after saying that he would not again after signing the prior wasteful spending bill. I'm Ron Edwards. Check out theronedwards.talkspot.com for news updates and other great stuff. Sponsored by the Tri-County Liberty Coalition.
Making a living can be tough these days with so many jobs going overseas. If you love numbers and puzzles and want job security, you can become a tax specialist with an amazing 6-month tax course from Tax Mama. Operate your own tax practice locally or anywhere in the world where there are American taxpayers. It's a great way to write off your trips to visit family for months at a time. Everything you need to pass the IRS 3 special enrollment examinations is included in this course. Visit irsexams.school, and if you need more than 6 months, that's okay. Take your time. You're in the course until you pass the exams or until you unsubscribe and reject Tax Mama's emails.
Welcome back. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your business diva, Melanie Collette, and my guest today is the one and only Mike Fitzpatrick. He's a cybersecurity expert and founder and CEO of NCX Group Security. He's going to talk to us today about why America's first data privacy law is such a big deal. Now, this data privacy law is only in California for now, but we're going to explain, or really Mike is, going to explain why, just because it's in California, we should all be concerned about this new data privacy law. And without further ado, Mike Fitzpatrick.
Hey, how are you? I'm happy to be with you.
Thank you so much for being here. I am so happy to have you back on the show. It's been such a long time. I've been booking. I have to book you out like 6 times in a row every month because I've been booking guests so often. It's a nice place to be because I remember a time when I had to beg people to be on the show, and now I have like a email full of people who want to be on the show. So I really got to do better with this because we need the information that you have way more often.
Well, it's nice that you're popular, but some of us were there at the beginning or close to
it. Exactly. So listen, for those of you, for those in the audience that might be new to the show or haven't caught a show with you on it, can you give them a little bit about your background and your company, NCX Group Security?
Sure. My name is Mike Fitzpatrick. I'm president and CEO of NCX Group, and we work with companies both nationally and internationally to mitigate the risks associated to cybersecurity and data privacy issues. So we've been doing this now for about 18 years. I've been in high tech myself, almost 40 years now. And, we work with a lot of banks, financial institutions, mortgage companies, higher ed, healthcare providers. It's always a fun and new and entertaining space because every day is different.
I'll bet. And I would think that it would be a nerve-wracking type of job when you're protecting people's security, their computer security. I would think that would be a nerve-wracking kind of job, especially with all that is out there in this day and age.
It's interesting because in the 18 years that we've been doing this, we've yet to have a client, knocking on wood right now, that has experienced a loss of data after working with us. And I like that because of the fact they listen to us and they do the right things in building a security program. The real line of defense in all of this, and the one thing that actually works, is if you build a robust security program. If you're just trying to meet compliance, you're going to meet compliance, but you're not going to be secure. It's a mathematical equation, right? To a certain extent, right? Security can make you compliant. A security program can bring you compliance, but compliance by itself cannot deliver security.
That makes sense, especially when it's kind of like when you think of government, I always think of the bare minimum. That's what honestly, not how you would treat your mother or your kids. It's not what you would do for them. It's kind of like what you would do for a distant cousin, 10 times removed, like the bare minimum.
Well, in California with government, when they write data privacy, data security laws, it's what government does to you rather than what they do to themselves, because they exempt themselves from all of these laws that they impose on everybody else. It is the most frustrating thing in the world from a security perspective. It's a whole lot of do as I say and not as I do, and it's just ludicrous.
Now that sounds really frustrating. BZ is in the Facey chat, and I don't know if you saw his post. He said he's curious to see if you think California actually did something right. So
with this particular law?
Yes, with this particular law. So the name of the law is called the California Consumer Privacy Act, or CCPA. That sounds really benign. I mean, why wouldn't consumers want to be protected? Sounds like something that's really good.
So let's start with the mess that is the origin of this law. Okay. This law was a ballot measure in California in 2018. The premise of the law is a great concept. It actually mirrors Europe to a certain extent, and most of the rest of the world, where everybody owns their identities, and companies cannot just use that as their intellectual property. So the person that wrote the ballot measure, the unfortunate part is, one, they're a real estate agent. Two, they're well-intended. Three, they have no idea of the complexities today related to cybersecurity, how systems actually function and work, and how data privacy works. None whatsoever.
Okay, now those things sound like a problem. massive problem. But that's never stopped government in California. Just to give you an idea how abusive government is in California, last year there were 4,000 bills alone in the State House in California. 4,000. So this particular, it was July 2018. It was going to be on the November ballot. Governor Jerry Brown and the Lieutenant Governor, now Governor Gavin Newsom, went to the person that wrote this ballot measure here in California and said, hey, we would like to have you remove that from the ballot. Would you remove it from the ballot if we make it a law? And the guy said, sure. So here in California, there's a Democrat supermajority here in the state of California, both houses. It's been this way for 20 years now. Oh, good Lord.
Actually, longer than that. And so the Republicans couldn't stop anything, change anything. I mean, 25% of the state of California registered voters are Republican. It's a one-party state. So this gets approved and shoved through in 2 days. Literally 2 days. It was shoved through so quickly that they didn't correct the typos, the grammatical errors, and the misspellings in it.
Wow.
And it became law. So here we fast forward to the start of 2019, and it goes into the Assembly this year and the Senate for amendments. So there are 48 amendments to this piece of legislation. 48. There were so many that they only processed through 20 of them this year. The other 28 will be processed in 2020. And so 5 of those amendments have been actually passed and added to the law.
Wow.
This is, you're talking about a data privacy law now that is the European GDPR actually on steroids. Because it changes a lot of things. It changes what is personal identifiable information.
Changes the definition.
Go ahead.
It changes the definition, right?
Right, exactly. So personal identifiable information for everybody concerned is name, address, phone number, driver's license, social security number, a credit card. Those 7 or 8 items, you can use any portion of 3 or 4 of those and build an identity. And so those have always been the PHI or the PI information that we always try to protect. Well, they've changed the definition now of what is identifiable information. So now it's not those things. It's now a profile. So it could be your Facebook profile. It could be information that they have on things that your shopping habits, Miss Amazon. And so all of those things. So if there's a breach anywhere along the way and you live in California, even though the business that you're dealing with isn't in California, they now have to adhere to it. This now follows any Californian anywhere they go.
So
this is incredibly troubling, but here's the bad news. There's 20 other states that have written similar legislation.
Here we go. So here we go. 20 other states have written. Well, and the thing is, I mean, how I think it ties in and why 20 other states would probably have to write similar legislation is because this is really applying to your cybersecurity, which means the internet. So how do you protect, how do you protect one state on the internet? For example, like you said about Amazon. If you're Amazon, how do you really just protect one state without making it kind of a company-wide policy? Why wouldn't you if you're an Amazon?
Well, okay, so the interesting thing in this is, one, remember, California is the 5th largest economy in the world.
Right.
Right? So you're not talking about a small change. You've got now, through this legislation, through this law, Javier Becerra, who is the Attorney General for the state of California, is now the de facto cybersecurity czar for the United States, because 12% of the U.S. population lives here.
And like 70% of the homeless, but that's another show.
I'll have to get video for you the next time I drive in. But, this gets to be really problematic in a number of different ways. Companies, I've got, clients and friends of mine that are really highly respected cybersecurity, chief security officers for companies, banks, et cetera, as well as those that are privacy officers. One friend of mine is the former chief privacy officer for Hewlett-Packard and for Intuit for about 25 years. There are grave concerns of how you actually implement this.
Well, so what everybody, I believe you said, is that the people who implemented this law were all computer experts. So that shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So no, of course I'm being facetious. So what is there a criteria for the companies that have to comply with this?
Well, one, you have to give people the ability to opt out. The companies that are required to meet this, and it's an interesting. I'm going to pull it up here just so I can be accurate on it. Okay, so this applies to companies that have over $25 million in revenue, in annual revenue. Okay, so $25 million in annual revenue, technically, according to the U.S. government, is still a small business.
$25 million in revenue?
Yes, $25 million in revenue.
Wow, that doesn't sound small. Business. That does not sound small to me.
I don't know. I've got one client that does probably close to $100 million a year, and there's 60 employees.
Wow.
Still a small business. So this applies to all companies collecting personal information that are over $25 million in revenue. It gives California consumers control over their personal information and where it goes. So anybody that's a data broker, or if your company is sharing information with their partners, because a lot of times with your mortgage company or your financial services companies, you'll see that they'll want you to opt in because they're sharing your data with their other partners in order to sell you other things.
Sure, of course.
So this now controls that. Now, on the surface, this is a great thing. The simple fact is they didn't finalize this law with no guidance, no clarity, no nothing until probably December 20th, 2019. And it goes into effect January 1.
Now.
So nobody's ready.
Right. So that's a major overhaul. How do they figure that companies are going to be able to do this?
Again, politicians don't understand the complexity of cybersecurity. They just don't. And so, there's new statutory damages in this. This is the interesting thing. So if it's an accidental breach under this new California law, the fine from the state of California that doesn't go to any of the affected parties, it goes to the state of California.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
It's all about the revenue. It all goes to it's $2,500 per exposed record.
Okay.
$2,500 times, what
50.
what was Target? 94 million?
Oh my Lord. But I noticed that in the information that you sent me, it had one fine for intentional non-compliance and one for
the intent
unintentional. I was like, what does that even mean?
So accidental disclosure is $2,500. Now this is just the state of California. The intentional, where somebody stole it and it got out and you didn't control it properly, and the state of California comes down on you, it's $7,500 per exposed record. Now that doesn't include the FTC getting involved in this stuff now.
I can't.
So this goes to what I've said to you before, and that is 53% of all small and mid-sized businesses in 2019 experienced a breach.
That's
53%,
that's
54%
over half.
of experienced a breach of some type. 66% of those companies are out of business in 6 months.
Yeah, now
we have a massive shortage of cybersecurity personnel right now. And right now it's at almost 4 million. By 2021, 2022, they're expecting it to be a 6 million person job shortage. Small business has been priced out of expertise. And
right.
The bad part is that all of this, whether you meet that $25 million threshold, the larger companies that small businesses do business with are going to require in their vendor risk management programs for those smaller companies to be at the same level they are. Otherwise, they're not going to do business with you. It's a risk, and it's a risk they're not going to be willing to take. So businesses, as I told you in one of the messages, businesses can't hide anymore. You're going to have to address cybersecurity, or your field of being able to do business and who you can do business with is going to be greatly limited.
But now, is the price of hiring an NCX group going? I mean, I would think that that's going to price some small businesses out of the market, and not everybody can. I would imagine not everybody can afford an NCX group to protect their security for their business.
Well, I mean, the vast majority of our clients are, and I say this all the time. I've got several clients that are global Fortune 50. We're starting a project next week that I'm just extremely excited about. That is with a multinational brand that owns about 30 other multinational brands, and I'm ecstatic about where that's going. So I have all of that on one side, and then on the other side, I've got a client in Newport Beach that is 15 employees, but they're publicly traded on NASDAQ, and they have to meet all the Sarbanes-Oxley regulations.
Oh goodness, that's a whole nother show.
That's a whole nother thing.
It is,
but their burden is the same as General Motors.
That's ridiculous. I have a question in the Facey chat. BZ wants to know, why can't we have this question is actually kind of funny. Well, why can't we just have a simple law which states that there will be no data sharing of anyone's information without permission of each and every individual? What would be wrong with that?
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think we should all own our own identities, and I don't think our identities should be a company's intellectual property when you give them your email address for product information. I absolutely fundamentally disagree with that whole premise, but once you turn over your identity, you're now the intellectual property of AT&T, or you're the intellectual property of Home Depot, or you're the intellectual property. It's not you anymore. So I agree with the premise of this law. There's been several attempts at trying to create a federal cybersecurity law. And I've advised one congressional rep, Mary Bono Mack, who at one point in time was my congressional rep. She's fantastic. And the other person that I ended up advising was Senator Dianne Feinstein. Now, the difference here is interesting to me. Senator Feinstein's office, they were more interested not in crafting legislation to actually get businesses to do the right thing, but they were more interested in creating revenue out of misfortune.
Okay.
That's on one side.
Right.
Then you have Mary Bono Mack. And Mary did a podcast with me years ago. And quite frankly, the conversation in between breaks was far better than anything that got on air. But Mary comes from a technology background. And she was telling me during the break, she said, Mike, I really love being able to talk about this because, people don't realize I'm a geek. And I said, what are you talking about? She says, my mom was part of the Manhattan Project.
Oh, wow.
I've been around science and technology my whole life. I love it. And you could tell that this was part of her DNA. And what she wrote that couldn't get the light of day with the Democrats running Congress at the time was the fact this great piece of legislation that actually mapped out all of the things that business should do to protect data. It wasn't about fees and fines and those kinds of things, but it was an attempt to put a national approach into data disclosure, breach notification disclosures, and that kind of thing, because now we have 50 different versions of those. So you've got those kinds of sides of it. And again, here in California, the Democrats, they've made this thing as murky as possible. There's so many different ways that you are going to, as a business, misstep. And the fines that are going to come with it are going to be massive. And it's just, if they had spent some time thinking through this, talking to cybersecurity professionals, and understanding how deep the layers of an onion go with cybersecurity, this is perhaps the most complex thing that anybody deals with today, maybe outside of brain surgery or heart surgery. But then again, if I can hack the medical device, I can do damage there too.
Now, aren't there some businesses, besides the fact that the government, the first thing they do is exempt themselves from anything like that? Aren't there some businesses that are exempted besides the ones that don't fit that criteria? Are there other exemptions?
Well, okay. So if you're already having to meet, let's say HIPAA or GLBA, you're exempt. Nonprofits are exempt from this. Nonprofits don't do anything in the way of cybersecurity, by the way. That's not even a topic within their circles.
Wait a minute. Excuse me. What? Back up. Did you just say? Wait. Did you just say that?
I did a whole podcast on this. Yeah, it's not even a subject at their conferences, Melanie.
Wow. Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Continue, but I didn't want to gloss over that because, many of us, I think, especially who deal with government and things like that, deal with a lot of nonprofit entities. And it just, I don't think ever occurs to any of us to, that like our information is probably at risk. You're thinking that you're being, you're donating to St. Joseph's Hospital or Shriners or whatever and giving them your, debit card to charge every month, and it's a nonprofit.
Well, if it's attached to a hospital, they're doing something. But if it's another type of nonprofit that isn't associated with a hospital or a financial services company or something like that, the reality is they probably have not done anything in the way of cybersecurity. So
Wow.
the other two exemptions in this right now for a year delay is B2B business and with how you have to treat their information and employee information. Those things are exempted right now with the California law. So this thing is going to be interesting. It's something that is very fluid. You asked, how do companies afford this? And we've had this conversation where part of my desire, something that is really close to my heart, is what these small businesses go through, and what you have to do to at least show a good faith effort to at least do some basics. And we have worked diligently over the last 15 years to try to really develop offerings and services that, the group, as I call it, the Fortune 5 million, those 5 million plus businesses with 100 employees or less can afford. So back in June, I think last time we talked about this, we had just rolled out our training application. And it starts at about $800 a month, and it has training and phishing and more of a self-help kind of approach. We just rolled out this week our new managed detection and response offering. I priced it out last night for a friend of mine that has a SaaS platform business. He's got 12 employees. He has CCPA to deal with and a couple of other things. But this managed detection and response, it's something that we're going to be able to do for about $1,000 a month for him.
Oh, that makes it affordable.
At least affordable. Yeah. So at least if there's an attack ongoing, or if it's a ransomware attack or something on his network, we will see it and we'll be able to shut it down and prevent it from going any further.
That's excellent. Now, I have another question in the Facey chat. BZ said, are European privacy data sharing laws logical and effective? And if so, why reinvent the wheel? Why not craft something similar to their laws for application here in the U.S.? What do you think about that?
Great question. There are 8 different versions of GDPR, the European rules and regs, that they're talking about. There's, as of last time I looked at it, I want to say it was March, April last year, there was only really about 2% of all the companies in the European Union that were actually in compliance with GDPR. So all GDPR really is about is building a cybersecurity program, hiring a chief security officer, having policies and procedures. It's doing the basic blocking and tackling. And if there's a breach, there's some heavy fines. Up to 4% of revenues can be the fine. Japan has a version of this. The Philippines has a version of this. Australia has their own version of it. Brazil has their version of it.
I bet China has their version of it too. I'm kidding.
Yeah, China's part of the problem.
It's called no Google for you.
Yeah, no, they don't use Google there.
No,
Google's got
I
their
know.
own thing going there.
Terrible. I'm sorry.
But,
Go ahead.
But yeah, so it's always been a hodgepodge, because the point where they're coming from is not trying to encourage companies and organizations to do the right thing. It's more of the stick and the fine that the governments can generate.
Wow. Now,
that make sense?
It does make sense. Now, what I find really interesting is, wait a minute. Before I get to that, Kim McClinton has a question, and it's a really good one. He wants to know if these laws apply to the Black Web. I bet the answer is it applies, but it doesn't matter because it's Black Web. And how, I'll let the professional answer that. How much is appropriated by the legislature to enforce without potential minority business discrimination, legal actions? That's a good question.
Okay, so are we talking about the dark web? I assume we're talking about the dark web.
Yes, he's talking about the dark web. Yes.
Okay.
He did say the black. He meant the African American web. I'm kidding. He said
I know Kenneth, and he's close to Lonnie, and
yes,
we're all tied up in a lot of different ways. So
yes, he meant to. I even said the black web, and I knew he meant the dark web. Yeah.
So the dark web, it's a lot of that's a lot of illegal activity going on anyway. Right. The web that most of the world is familiar with, quite frankly, is the tip of the freaking iceberg. Right. When it comes to what's out there. So the rules and regulations are for sellers of data, folks that collect data. If you notice, a lot of your privacy settings and terms and conditions on your apps and the websites that you visit and all of that have changed. Microsoft has made a standards adoption practice to adhere to everything they do to CCPA globally.
See, and that's what I was saying earlier. Say that again.
Let me say that again. Microsoft has adopted CCPA, California Consumer Privacy Act, as the standard for data privacy and cybersecurity. And so everything they do and everything that data that they handle will meet that criteria. So they actually have now provided a tool for businesses to use to determine whether or not your servers meet CCPA, whether your environment meets CCPA from a Microsoft standpoint. There was a second part to Kenneth's question, and I forgot what that was.
Oh no, I lost it in the feed. It's wait a minute. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, I know.
It.
I was looking.
Did you lose it in the feed? Wait, here it is. And how much is appropriated by legislature to enforce without potential minority business discrimination legal actions?
Kenneth, I would say that they're discriminating against every business,
right?
With this particular law, right? The fine is the fine. The breach is the breach. It is. We've been on the other side of these breaches and dealing with what customers go through with our forensics team and our incident response team. The only way to really mitigate this stuff is to do your due diligence and prepare for the storm that's coming before it comes. I was brought into a call. This was 3 months ago. Brought into a call by a friend, and the guy that I'm talking to, he has a SaaS platform. He's built it over 10 years. He's acquired 6 different companies. And one day, this message shows up in their chatbot system. Hey, I've been able to hack your chatbot here, and I can tell you how to fix it if you would pay me X.
Right.
And this went on for a while, and they didn't think anything about it, didn't pay it any real attention. And so one day, they walk in, and 2/3 of their application has been deleted. Their platform that they sell to customers. So think of it this way. If you walked in one day and you're used to using Facebook and 2/3 of the application was deleted and wiped away from the face of the earth, what are you going to do?
And this is part of the reason why 60% of businesses go out of business. That when it happens.
Well, you won't survive the lawsuits. You won't survive the fines. You won't. The average cost of a cybersecurity breach now is $7 million. And that's a breach of between 10,000 identities and 100,000 identities.
Wow.
There isn't an insurance policy that will cover this. And the unfortunate thing is you have the insurance industry selling breach insurance to business owners as a de facto protection for the business. the reality is they never intend to pay out on those policies. There's an eject policy. There's an eject process in it. If any of your stuff has changed in your IT environment, that gives them reason to deny the claim.
There's a question on the Facey chat about the dark web. I just lost it, but I think I remember it. One of my sponsors, John Campbell, wanted to know, basically, is the dark web all hype or not? And my response was, it's a real thing. Don't go anywhere near it. Like, like a hot stove. We could do a whole show on the dark web, I think. But what is your opinion on, like, the dark web, like a brief overview kind of opinion on the dark web? Because I wanted to address that question, just in case people are unaware about the dark web.
The dark web is
right.
The dark web is anything you can imagine is out there and available for sale. Everything from drugs to,
people,
sex trafficking to
right.
people. It is everywhere, and it's global.
Yep, and it's
and then the other part that you have in that is, the network of devices out there, primarily video cameras, that are not searchable on Google, because Google and Facebook, Google and DuckDuckGo and some of the other search engines out there, Yahoo, that's just the commercial stuff that they're providing you search on. Now, if you go to Shodan, which is, the Google of all other things for web cameras, you can, part of what we do in doing deep dives into companies is we look at, IPs for video cameras associated with those clients. There's free tools available out there to where I can go through and I can scan a company from the outside without them knowing it. It will tell me what everything is attached to that domain.
That is super frightening. The only good thing about it is that people have to go, you have to go look for it. You have to be able to know how to go find it. It doesn't occur organically, or, it's not like super easy, I don't think. Well, unless you're you.
Yeah, use a Tor router and an Onion router and go. I'm sure Levon can tell you.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. And I have students that were in my programming classes. I taught computer programming for 3 years, and they used to talk about the dark web all the time. And I used to tell them, you all are crazy. Don't go anywhere near that. Why are you playing with, to me, I look at the dark web as like the hell side of the earth. That's how I see it. It's like the digital version of hell. All really bad, horrible things happen there.
It's the Ouija board of the internet. No.
Really? It really is. We're about to close the show. Can you please tell my audience how they can avail themselves of your services, where they can reach you? If you're still doing your podcast, which is wonderful, how they can do that?
Okay, so if you'd like to get in touch with us, the easiest place is through ncxgroup.com, and that's ncxgroup.com. You can find us on social platforms at NCX Group, and that's for Facebook, for Twitter, for LinkedIn, and for I think there's an Instagram out there, but not much. And so that's the easiest place to get in touch with us. And if there's something we can do to help, just happy to answer questions if that's all you need to. So thanks, Melanie.
Excellent. Listen, thank you. Excellent information as usual. I posted your stuff in the Facey chat. So happy to have you back on the show. And I think I already have you scheduled for next month sometime. So, I think I'll
check the calendar, but great questions from the audience. That was fun.
Yes, they did a fantastic job. So I want to thank everybody in the audience. My sponsor, John Campbell. Tax Mama has a new ad coming out. I hope to have it out by the next show. BZ, Kim McClinton, Doug Paz. And if I'm missing anybody, I'm really sorry, but thank you for being in the Facey chat. If you're listening to this via download, thank you for supporting the show. Remember, all of this is very important because after all, it's your money. Have a great weekend.